to today's video. In today's video, I'll be giving my 2024 prediction between Kamala Harris and Ron DeSantis. Now, this is a very real possibility, so I'm just going to give a prediction for this. Now, I frequently, in fact, I've done it today, like, multiple times, I believe. I'm still not even certain. I frequently flip-flop between whether or not Kamala Harris is a good candidate or a bad candidate, because we really can see there are different ways to see this, because on one hand she does well in certain areas where Democrats are trending, where things are trending left, where it would help put shifts into motion, such as she is a fairly establishmentarian candidate. She's kind of populist but pretty establishmentarian. So she is gonna do pretty well in the suburbs. I think that she would also do fairly well with minority voters. She is a minority, which would help her, or could help her potentially. I don't necessarily know that it would. We don't always see minorities do well among minority voters. I do think that she would do fairly well among minority voters. I think that Biden was also a pretty bad candidate for minority voters. In that I think that she might be maybe a little bit worse. But they're both not great candidates for minority voters. But I think that her policies, for the most part, appeal to minority voters. Both Biden and Harris have had tricky pasts with minority voters, but Biden was able to do very well with minority voters despite his past. Harris, I think, will probably be able to put that, or she'll be able to put that, or I guess she'll manage to get voters to put that behind them and focus on her policy. And I think that she is a fairly strong candidate when it comes to raising turnout. So even if she does do slightly worse than Biden among minority voters, I think that the raised minority turnout would probably result in a net gain. So we're going to start off by labeling all the safe Harris states. Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado. It'll probably shift at 1.5%. I think it was. I think Biden went by like 13.5%. I have a map over here, that I frequently reference. Yeah, okay, he went by 13.5%. So she only really needs to shift it 1.5% to the left, and it's already shifting to the left. I think that she'll be a fairly strong candidate for in Denver, and she'll probably do well enough in Denver's suburbs to push it to the left. She'll win D.C., Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Vermont. Maybe lose Connecticut, or maybe win Connecticut, New Jersey, and maybe Delaware by likely margins. I wouldn't count on it though. She'll probably, like, New Jersey is essentially, like, New Jersey and I guess parts of Connecticut are pretty much extensions, or not all of New Jersey, but a lot of New Jersey are extensions of or suburbs, I guess, of Philadelphia and New York City. And I mean, like, I guess you could say that parts of them are like suburbs of, actually no, I was gonna say suburbs of DC, but then I forgot for a second where DC was. Or like, I didn't, I knew it was in like that area, but I forgot that it was between Maryland and Delaware. But if we go look at Connecticut, I mean, like, I guess you could say that part of it is a suburb to New York City, but that's not really a suburb. I wouldn't say it's a suburb. Only 2 counties really voted red. Biden won it by 20%. Clinton wasn't a great candidate here. I actually think that Harris would, I think that she would be bad with white working class voters and white rural voters. But I do think that she would actually do fairly well among educated white voters, which make up a fairly large chunk of the electorate all throughout a lot of this Northeast. So I think that she would do fairly well among those voters. Also, Rhode Island, we could talk about maybe going red. I doubt it. Like, even it's for every county voted blue. Obviously, there are only 3 counties, but like even like these, like, Washington County is a rural county, and Biden still won it by 19%. Kent County, like, he won that by 7%. Providence County won by 23%. They're not gonna vote. They're probably not gonna vote red. I think Clinton lost one of them. But I think that they're probably gonna be safe. And then also Maine's first congressional district. I have a lot of maps. Okay, yeah, this is 2016. I have a lot of New York Times map tabs open. So I'm gonna go look at not Harris, excuse me, Clinton's performance there. Can I find it? Okay, I don't know that I can. Yeah, okay, I don't know that I can find her performance in Maine's second congressional district, or first congressional district, excuse me. I think she won it by, like, likely margins. I don't think that Harris would do that bad. She'll probably win by safe margins. Now for all the safe Republican states: Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas. Oklahoma, Nebraska, and it's first and third. Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri. Missouri shifting to the right. It's not going to go blue, or being close. So those are all those states. Utah, she's not a great candidate for rural Utah. And right now you have to be a strong candidate for rural Utah. Same with Montana, she won't be able to do it. In Missouri, she's not going to be able. She'll probably lose by like maybe 20%. In Indiana, she might be able to do well in some areas that she probably. Oh, I forgot to label Ohio, or excuse me, Ohio, Iowa, for her, and New York. Okay, but now for all the likely Democratic states. First off, New Mexico. I'll talk about them in a minute. Virginia and Maine at large, and that is it. Now, New Mexico, not much discussing to do here. We go take a look at New Mexico. She won it, or Biden won it by like 10%. What was it? 10? No, yeah, 10.8%. For Biden. I think that she'll probably do a little bit worse. I don't necessarily, or it depends. I think that it really depends on how she does with minority voters. I think that if DeSantis is able to continue to do well with minority voters, he'll probably make it a little bit closer. It really just depends on Harris's performance, though, but it'll probably still end up being a likely state. State of Virginia, I think that she will. I think that in Virginia, she is a very strong candidate. Now, I think she's a very good candidate for all those black voters in Virginia, but she's also a really good candidate in the. I'm just gonna go click on Virginia. I think that she is also a really good candidate for these DC suburbs up here. Fairfax City is some county over here. Prince William, London. I've never known how to pronounce that. That little county, Arlington, I think is what it is. I think Arlington. There's two counties. One of them. Actually both of them, obviously. So I think that should do very well there. I think it should also do very well among a lot of these richer voters in Virginia. I think that a lot of these voters will want a more establishmentarian candidate, even a candidate she's farther to the left than Biden. So I think that she would still probably do well there. And then Maine, it could potentially be lean. Biden won it by 9%. I think she could actually probably maybe improve on Biden's margins. I would assume it would shift to the right, and she'll probably win it by like 7%. But I think that she would still probably win Maine at large. And for all the likely Republican states, Kansas, South Carolina, Maine second. Oh, not West Virginia. West Virginia is going to be safe. Ohio, Iowa, and Alaska. Now, there's a lot to get through here. First off, Alaska, it's shifting to the left. Trump won it by like 10%. I think it was actually exactly 10%. As we take a look at this, I think that she would do well in a lot of. So it's kind of weird. In Alaska, the cities are red, and a lot of these rural areas, which have a larger Native American population, are blue. Kind of odd. Although a lot of these cities are still pretty red, but they're more competitive. A lot of these areas are red though. But like there are 8,000 people that vote, or more like 9,000 people in this entire county that voted. But so as we go look at this, I think that she has the appeal. I don't think that either Harris or DeSantis are gonna go fly down to Alaska. But I think that since it's technically shifting to the left, and I don't see it shifting 5% to the right. DeSantis will probably win it by likely margins. Kansas, shifting to the left. Harris, a fairly strong candidate for the suburbs. I don't necessarily know that she would do as well in Kansas suburbs, and she'll probably do bad in like Sedgwick. Is that how it's pronounced? County. And a lot of these Kansas City suburbs, she will probably do alright in, but I think she would do awfully in rural Kansas. So actually, I'm just gonna label it safe because DeSantis will probably win it by over 15%. Even though it is technically shifting to the left, I don't see her doing well enough in rural Kansas to do anything there. In the state of South Carolina, I think that she will probably lose it by probably 12%. DeSantis, I think, is a fairly strong candidate for a state like South Carolina. A lot of rural vote. I think he'll do probably pretty well among the black vote. I think that honestly Harris would still probably get a net gain, but it wouldn't be enough to make up for her lack in rural areas. And when it comes to DeSantis's performance in the suburbs, we can actually go take a look at area type. This is just exit polls from Florida. I might go look at national exit polls. I don't know. But if we go look at 2020 exit polls, DeSantis actually underperformed Trump in 2020. He overperformed him in 2016, underperformed him in 2020. So I think that DeSantis is, and Trump, we all know, is an awful candidate for the suburbs. and they did similarly in the suburbs. So I think that DeSantis would not be a very strong suburban candidate. And then in the state of Ohio and Iowa are two states. I can just throw them together. Harris, I think, will do pretty well in a lot of Ohio. She'd probably win Montgomery County by 3, maybe 4%. Probably, maybe win Delaware County. I doubt it. Probably lose it by like 3 or 4%. Probably do very well in Cuyahoga County. Maybe win Mahoning. I don't know. Um, but she would just do atrociously in the suburbs, or excuse me, rural areas, because these white working class voters in the Rust Belt absolutely hate Kamala Harris. They hate her. She would do awfully in the Rust Belt. I think she's an off or not awful. She's a bad candidate for the Rust Belt, but also a good candidate for the Sun Belt, which is a little bit what I was talking about earlier, because the Sun Belt is essentially the Democrats' future. While the Rust Belt is not going to be the future for very long. The only question is whether or not Harris will, yes, be able to push those trends, but still do well enough, and at least like Michigan feel to win. But I think that she will probably lose these states. Iowa, there's a possibility for losing by over 15%. I highly doubt it. I think she'll probably lose by like 11, 12%. Maybe 10%, maybe 13%. Probably not 15% though. Now for the lean, these states, Nevada. Oh, actually, Nevada can be top. Nevada can go till early, and I'll discuss that in a bit. But I'll just go label a few of these ones that I'm not gonna have any questions over. So Minnesota and New Hampshire. If we go look at Minnesota, I think that Harris would do well enough in a lot of these suburban areas. She'd do well enough in Minneapolis to do well. Maybe flip Anoka County. Probably do well in some of these other areas. Probably do fairly well in the suburbs. She would do bad in the rural areas, and probably do worse along the Iron Range. She'd probably manage to hang on to St. Louis County. There's a good chance that she does lose Lake County, though. I'm not actually sure. Did Trump win Lake County in 2016? I'm just interested in seeing if Trump won Lake County. Okay, he did not. That's interesting. I think that there's actually a good chance that she does lose Lake County, which is a big part of why I'm going to label it lean, because if she does lose Lake County, it probably wouldn't be able to she would probably be able to keep the state because of her urban and suburban performances, but not be able to keep it by a large enough margin to actually improve. She'd probably win it by about 4%. New Hampshire, back to what I was talking about, I think that in this state, she's not a great rural candidate, but like New Hampshire is not like, it's like a rural state, but it's not like a rural state. It's kind of rural. It has a lot of cities, I guess. But I think that she'd probably do well enough among the educated or college educated, I guess, white vote in New Hampshire to do well. She'd probably lose a few of these counties. But I think that she would still ultimately win. Like Rockingham County, there are some counties that she could probably lose. A few, yeah, like Sullivan County. I think that she'd probably lose a few of these counties, but I think that she would still do well enough to be able to carry it. DeSantis just doesn't really have that type of appeal. Now these remaining states, actually I haven't labeled DeSantis as a lean state. Texas, Florida, that's probably it. Now Texas, a lot of these states are basically what's going to decide it. Texas, you probably won about like 4%. I think that Harris is a fairly strong candidate for Texas. Probably do well in where is it? Over here actually, Harris County, kind of funny. Probably do well in Harris County and Dallas County. Okay, that's called Tarrant County. Interesting. But I think she could probably do well in a lot of these cities, but she'd do so bad. Like obviously, Joe Biden didn't do well in the suburbs. Anyways, he won 78 votes in that county. I'm trying to find like absurdly small numbers of votes. But I think that at this point, she obviously wouldn't do very well in rural Texas as expected. I think that she might be able to do well in some of these suburbs, but I think that DeSantis is also a fairly strong candidate for a state like Texas. He did very well among Hispanic and Latino voters. He lost them by a larger margin than Trump, I believe. But yeah, he did. He lost them by like 10%, and Trump lost them by like 7%. But he would still probably win it just because he has enough of that appeal. Like he did, actually, he probably did about as well there as Joe Biden did in 2020 in Florida in 2016. But then in Florida, there there's probably going to be like a 2% margin of victory. He lost Pinellas County by, I believe, a larger margin than what Joe Biden won it by. I think he lost Duval and Seminole counties. He did do well in Miami-Dade. He only lost by 20%, which is a fairly strong showing for a Republican at the time. At this point, he could maybe lose it by only 3%. Although I wouldn't bet on it. I think he'll probably still win by like 2%, or win the state by like 2% though. Just because I think he'd do well enough in Miami-Dade and well enough among, like, in rural Florida among the Panhandle. I also do think that since he is a Trumpist, he probably wouldn't have the greatest suburban appeal. But I think it would be enough. Like I said, I think he actually did worse in the suburbs than Trump in Florida than Trump did. But I still think that he would be a fairly strong enough suburban candidate to win the state. Now there are a few remaining states and a few. Actually, first off, I never did label Nebraska second. Harris just probably wouldn't do well enough among a lot of these voters in Omaha, and I think parts of Lincoln are in that congressional district. She would probably do well enough, but not well enough to win it by like 6% as well. Probably not well enough in the suburbs, and I believe the counties or the districts like that. So not a lot of rural vote there, but Clinton did lose it. So she probably won it by like 4 or 5%, similar margins to Minnesota. Now the remaining states will probably decide the election. A few I want to go label first. Nevada, it could be lean blue, honestly. The only difference is that both Harris and DeSantis are slightly better candidates than Trump and Clinton. Clinton won it by 2.4%. It'll probably be more like a 1.1 to 0.9%, just because DeSantis can do well enough in Washoe County, could potentially flip it. So I think that, actually, there's a good chance that he does, but I think that Harris will probably do better in Clark County than Biden, probably win by 11, 12, 13%. So that's probably how Nevada will go. I'm just going to label it lean because I think that Harris could still narrowly hang on to Washoe County. And then for DeSantis, actually, I'm just going to go state by state. Let's go label Arizona. Now, DeSantis, I think it could be lean, but if we go look at this, the suburbs in Arizona are shifting to the left. I don't have the Arizona data. I do have this, but the only real notable suburbs are the suburbs in Maricopa County, which we can only really see. But the suburbs in Arizona are still shifting to the left, and they're still red. So for DeSantis to be able to win, he would have to backtrack like 8 years of suburban shift, plus do better among Hispanic and Latino voters than Trump did when he was the incumbent, and he was already doing very well among those voters. And we already know they favor incumbents, and Harris would be kind of an incumbent as she is the vice president. So I think it would be very difficult for DeSantis to win enough of those voters. I do think that he would be a strong enough suburban candidate to make it very close. But I also think that Harris could do well. Like we've seen Mark Kelly and Kirsten Sinema do well in the state. They are fairly moderate. Harris is she's farther to the left than them. But the state would have also undergone like 4 years of shifting, so I'm just going to label it like tilt blue, probably like a half a percentage margin of victory, very narrow, but she would probably still be able to hold out. Now these remaining states are all very close. I think that they could all go either way, if I'm being honest. And these states could essentially decide the election. Harris wins them, she wins, DeSantis wins them, he wins. So these states will probably decide the election. Now, I'm not 100% sure how I would actually label each of these. I'm going to go label probably the most obvious first is Michigan. I think it would be tilt blue. DeSantis is, I think, actually a strong candidate for the white working class, and a strong enough candidate that he could win Livingston County by like 25, 27%, Macomb County by like 12%, Oakland County, he would probably only lose it by he'd probably lose it by similar margins to Trump, maybe a little less. He would probably win Monroe County, or he would definitely win Monroe County, but he could probably win it by a lot. I think he could do very, very well in rural Michigan. Harris would be awful in rural Michigan. I'm just gonna label it tilt blue. I'm kind of being a little liberal on this. I think that Harris could still lose it, and that would not be insane. It's just hard to tell how it'll vote. I'm just going to label it tilt blue because the suburbs are still faintly red, and I think that Harris would be a fairly strong candidate in the suburbs. It could still easily be tilt red, though. It could go either way. Michigan, one of the closest states. Okay, hold up. My computer. Okay, now it's gonna work. It could be tilt red. It really could go either way. I don't know where to throw it. I'm just gonna throw it tilt blue. I'm gonna be a little bit in favor of Kamala Harris right now, as this prediction is pretty. As I've kind of given a lot of states to DeSantis, and like I said, Nevada, I've been giving tilt blue. Actually, I might just label it tilt blue. I think that's probably the more likely scenario. Because DeSantis will probably do well among rural voters. But that's Michigan. Now Wisconsin. This is not a very big surprise. It could honestly be lean red. Probably similar margins to Nevada. I'm just gonna label it tilt red because I labeled Nevada tilt blue. Now DeSantis will do very well in rural Wisconsin. I think that he has the appeal in a lot of these Milwaukee suburban counties. He'll probably win Brown County by like 10%. Won't do very well in Madison. I don't think he'd do very well in Madison at all. But he'd probably flip Door County and win it by like 2-3% So I think that he could still actually potentially win this by lean margins. Like I said, I'm just going to label it tilt. Could vote either way. Now these three states, oddly enough, I was not intending to do this on like my Kamala Harris versus Tom Cotton election, which I've since questioned because it could honestly, that race could go either way. These are my three final states, and I realized with my AOC versus MTG election night, while making it, that these are the three final states. So that was not intentional, but for whatever reason, these three states always end up being the three final states. Now, at this point, this is becoming more, at this point, like an election night. If Harris wins one of them, she wins. DeSantis needs, I believe, all three to win. Now, I'm going to label North Carolina. It'll be similar to Wisconsin. DeSantis will probably do well enough in rural Wisconsin and halt the suburban swing. Or not halt it. He'll probably still win the suburb, or he'll probably still do worse in the suburbs, but not nearly as bad as he would do if it were to be Trump running. So I think that DeSantis will probably win the suburbs. Tilt red very, very narrowly. So I'm just gonna give DeSantis the I think that he'd probably narrowly win the suburbs, and that would help him win the state. Not to mention, he would also probably do fairly well among minority voters. I don't necessarily know that he would do well enough to improve on Trump's margins because he did fairly well there. And Harris will probably visit the state, but I think that would still probably end up being tilt red. Now, the two states that remain, Pennsylvania and Georgia. And these two states are difficult to tell, and I am kind of conflicted because I think that Harris would actually probably win Georgia, which is weird because I also think that DeSantis is the stronger candidate and would probably win the election, which is why this is so weird. Because looking at DeSantis, I think that he has enough suburban appeal, but I don't know that I think that with higher turnout, I think that considering the fact that minority voter turnout will probably be at a representative share, even if he does do better among minority voters, it'll probably just be an even split. It probably won't. The two will probably cancel each other out. Harris will probably very narrowly win it. I feel weird saying that because at this point I feel like DeSantis would probably win. So honestly, I could give him Michigan. Like I said, Michigan and Georgia could go either way. I think that Harris would narrowly win both. I also think that this would not be insane. DeSantis could narrowly win both, and then Pennsylvania, I think DeSantis would probably narrowly carry, just because Harris is a pretty bad candidate for the white working class. If she were able to get endorsements from Tom Wolf, she probably would get endorsements from Tom Wolf, Bob Casey, and like John Fetterman, but I think that she would have to have a lot of extensive campaigning here, and she would also have to moderate her views. She would have to be a little bit more pro fossil fuels, I guess, and more, or she could try to convince a lot of these voters that she's gonna bring them into clean energy, which is a growing industry. I don't necessarily know though, so I think that this is a possibility. This is also a very real possibility. Both are possible. I think that it'll be Alabama will not be winning. He'll win by safe margins. I don't know. She would not come anywhere close in Alabama. But I think that both of these are very, very real possibilities. This is actually a real possibility. So there are a lot of serious there are a lot of chances that a lot of these things happen. That's just what I'm gonna leave you guys with. These could both go either way. I'm not gonna label them toss-ups. I think that if I were to have to label them, I'll label Michigan tilt blue, and just considering the fact that Georgia is shifting to the left, Georgia tilt blue. Both are pretty much toss-ups, so I'm just gonna have to label them tilt blue. Although once again, we could see this. This. I think that DeSantis would probably be maybe favorite to win. It would definitely be a very close election. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please like it. If you didn't, feel free to leave a dislike. Please subscribe. And stay tuned for my next video. Sorry that this video was so long. And I will see you there. Bye.